Ever wondered what happens when just one M365 service goes down, but it drags the others with it? You're not alone. Today, we're unpacking the tangled reality of M365 outages and why your existing playbook might be missing the hidden dependencies that leave you scrambling. Think Exchange going dark is your only problem? Wait until SharePoint and Teams start failing too. If you want to stop firefighting and start predicting, let's walk through how real-world incident response demands more than turn it off and back on again. Why M365 outages are never just one thing. If you've ever watched a Teams outage and thought, at least Exchange and SharePoint are safe, you're definitely not alone. But the reality isn't so generous. It starts out as a handful of complaints. Maybe someone can't join a meeting or sends a message and it spins forever. 15 minutes later, email sends slow down, OneDrive starts timing out, and calendar sync is suddenly out of whack. By noon, you're walking past conference rooms full of confused users because meeting chats are down, shared files are missing, and even your incident comms are stalling out. This is Microsoft 365 at its most stubborn, a platform that hides just how tangled it really is until the dominoes start to fall. Let me run you through what this looks like in the wild. Imagine kicking off your Monday with an odd Teams problem. Not a full outage, just calls that drop and a few people who can't log in. Most admins would start with Teams diagnostics, maybe check the Microsoft 365 Admin Center for an alert or two. But before you can even sort the first round of trouble tickets, someone from HR calls Outlook can't send outside emails. This isn't a coincidence. The connection you might not see is Azure Active Directory authentication. Even if Teams and Exchange Online themselves are showing healthy in the portal, without authentication, nobody's getting in. SharePoint starts to lock people out, group files become unreachable, and by noon, half your org is stuck in a credentials loop while your status dashboard stays stubbornly green. It doesn't take much. A permission service that hiccups, a regional failover gone wrong, or an update that trips a dependency under the hood. August 2023 gave us a real taste of this ripple effect. That month, Microsoft confirmed a major authentication outage that, on paper, started with a glitch in Azure AD. The first alerts flagged Teams login issues, but within 20 minutes, reports flooded in about mail flow outages on Exchange and SharePoint document access flatlining. Even Microsoft's own support status page choked for a while, leaving admins to hunt for updates on Twitter and Reddit. Nobody could confirm if it was a cyber attack or just a bad code push. In these moments, it becomes obvious that Microsoft 365 doesn't break the way single applications do. It breaks like a citywide traffic jam. One red light on a busy avenue, and suddenly cars are backed up for miles across unconnected neighborhoods. That's the catch. Invisible links are everywhere. You can have Teams and SharePoint provisioned perfectly, but the minute a shared identity provider stutters, everything locks up. And here's the twist. When a service is up, it doesn't always mean it's usable. You might see the SharePoint site load, but try syncing files or using any Power Platform integration and watch the error messages pile up. Sometimes services remain online just long enough to confuse users who can open apps but can't save or share anything critical. It's like getting into the office building only to find the elevators and conference rooms all badge locked. Let's talk about Playbooks, since this is where most response plans fall flat. Most orgs have runbooks or OneNote pages that treat each service as an island. They'll have a Teams page, an Exchange checklist, and maybe a few notes jammed under SharePoint issues. That model worked in the old on-premises days, when an Exchange failure meant you'd reboot the Exchange server and move on. In Microsoft 365, nothing is really isolated. Even your login experience is braided across Azure AD, Intune device compliance, conditional access, and dozens of microservices. Try to follow a simple playbook and you'll spend half your incident window troubleshooting the wrong layer, all while users keep calling. Zero-day threats just make this worse. Microsoft's approach to 0 days is often to quarantine and sometimes disable features across multiple cloud workloads to contain the blast radius. Picture a vulnerability that impacts file sharing. Suddenly, Microsoft can flip switches that block file attachments or disable group chats across thousands of tenants, all in the name of security. Your users experience a mysterious outage, but what's really happened is a safety net has slammed down that blocks whole categories of features. So while you're working through your regular communications plan, core M365 products are forcibly stripped down and your standard troubleshooting steps hit a wall. This is why even a seemingly minor hiccup can unravel the entire M365 experience. If you're mapping only the big name services, you're going to miss the crisscross of backend dependencies. Your response needs to be mapped mapped to reality, to the real relationships under the surface, not just a checklist of app icons. Otherwise, you're playing catch up to the incident instead of getting ahead of it. So what else could be lurking underneath your tidy incident response plans? And what dependencies almost nobody thinks about until the pain hits? The hidden web. Dependencies you're probably missing. It's a familiar scene. Exchange is sluggish, Teams is flat out refusing to load, and you get the optimistic idea to fix Exchange first, thinking everything else will fall back in line. But Exchange bounces and Teams still spins like nothing ever happened. That's the frustration baked into the guts of Microsoft 365. On the surface, these are different logos on the admin center. Underneath, though, you've got a thicket of shared systems, authentication, permissions, pipelines, APIs, where one break can set off a chain reaction you'd never diagrammed out. Take authentication as the main character in this story. Everything leans on Azure AD, whether you know it or not. When Azure AD stumbles, Teams, SharePoint, and even that expensive compliance add-on you got last year all brace for impact. It's almost comical when you realize that even third-party SaaS tools you've layered on top, anything claiming single sign-on, are caught in the same undertow. Microsoft 365 isn't a neat row of dominoes. It's more like a pile of wires behind your TV. Unplug the wrong one and suddenly nothing makes sense. Picture this. Friday, quarter end, Azure AD goes down hard. No warnings, just a flood of password prompts that seem like a prank. Users aren't just locked out of Teams. They lose SharePoint and even routine apps like OneDrive. But here's where it gets trickier. Your company's HR portal, which isn't a Microsoft tool at all, quietly relies on SSO. That stops working. Someone finally tries logging into Salesforce, and guess what? That's out too. People hit refresh and hope for a miracle. Meanwhile, the calls don't stop. You're not dealing with a Teams outage anymore. You're knee-deep in cascading failures that don't respect where your playbooks end. Let's talk Power Platform. Automations built in Power Automate or Power Apps might look isolated until you watch every one of them flash errors because a connector for Outlook, SharePoint, or even a Teams webhook has failed. People assume if SharePoint loads, their business workflows will work. That's wishful thinking. Just one failed connector may be caused by a permissions reset or a background API throttle, and the daily invoice approvals grind to a halt. You don't spot these issues while everything is running smoothly. They only stand out when your executive assistant's automated calendar update refuses to run and the finance team misses a deadline. But the real twist, even your monitoring might be quietly taking a nap right when you need it. A lot of organizations route M365 logs into a CM or compliance archive using, what else, service connectors that authenticate through Azure AD or use API keys. If Azure AD is having a bad day, your CM solution may stop seeing events in real time. You look at the dashboards, they show no new incidents, and meanwhile, tickets fill up for access errors. It's a hole you only spot once you fall straight through it. Now, here's the kicker. Microsoft's own documentation doesn't always help you find these cracks before they widen. Official guides focus tightly on service-by-service health, troubleshooting teams fixing mail flow in Exchange, or restoring a SharePoint library. Seldom do they lay out how workflows are actually stitched together by permissions models, graph APIs, or background jobs. So even admins who know their way around the portal get surprised. You face a world where compliance alerting was assumed to just work until it doesn't, and there's no page in the admin center to diagnose the full interconnected mess. Third-party tools and integrations are a risk of their own. Take something as simple as an integration with a CRM or project management tool. Maybe you set up a workflow that pushes SharePoint updates straight into Jira or triggers a Teams alert from ServiceNow. If one API key expires, or if the connector provider suffers a brief outage, your business-critical flows dry up with zero warning. Even worse, because these connections often operate behind the scenes, you don't find out until users start missing notifications. Or data updates never arrive. So, how do you keep this from turning into regular whiplash for your IT teams? The secret is mapping out every single connection and dependency long before you're under fire. Build out a matrix that draws lines from not just core apps, Exchange, SharePoint, Teams, but every automation, every log pipeline, every third-party API, and even every compliance engine that reaches into M365. The exercise is tedious, but the first time you minimize an incident from 3 days of chaos to 3 hours, the benefit is hard to ignore. You'll start spotting weak links you can replace now, not when everything is on fire. This kind of planning also changes how you write and update your incident response plans. If you wait to learn about these dependencies while users are panicking, you're always playing a losing game. The next step is figuring out exactly how a modern incident response plan has to flex and adapt when entire swathes of the platform go dark at once. Because nothing breaks in isolation, and neither should your playbook. Integrated playbooks beyond turn it off and on again. If your incident response plan is just a list of if Teams is down, do this, if Outlook is slow, try that, then you're already behind. That sort of playbook made sense back when downtime meant a single mailbox hiccup or a SharePoint site that randomly refused to open. The reality now is multi-service chaos, where something takes out 2, maybe 3 critical tools at once, and your checklist is suddenly about as useful as a paper map in a blackout. Most response plans weren't built for this. Flip through your documentation and you'll probably find workflows that live in their own silos, one section for Exchange issues, another for SharePoint, a separate set of steps for Teams. They look neat and organized until a major event smashes all those best laid plans together. Let's say it's a Monday and both Teams and Outlook take a nosedive. Maybe it's a rolling outage, maybe something bigger. But pretty soon users can't chat, calendars stop syncing, and email traffic dries up. Now, leadership's on your case for updates. Sounds manageable until you realize your entire communications plan also relies on those same broken tools. The response checklist might tell you to email the crisis update or post a notice in the incident channel, but how do you do that if every route is blocked? We've all seen that moment when the escalation ladder asks you to ping the CTO on Teams for approval and there's nowhere to click send. That's when the scramble really starts, and honestly, it's where most teams get caught out. The real challenge comes to light when a breach hits Azure AD itself. Suddenly, it's not just loss of access. A whole chunk of your security blanket gets yanked away. MFA doesn't work, no one can sign in, and even privileged admin accounts might as well not exist. Your carefully plotted escalation path is useless because the very step that lets people authenticate and respond is gone. The clean, ordered, call this person, send this alert, escalate to this channel process falls apart. You need a playbook that can flex and change with the situation, not just run on autopilot. That's why checklists alone fall short. What actually works is moving toward a decision tree approach, a living document that asks, is X working, yes or no? If no, what are your alternatives? For example, if you lose Azure AD, your tree might branch down into activating cellular messaging or manual communication systems. This model gives you room to adapt as conditions shift because anyone who's lived through a cross-service incident knows the ground moves beneath you every few minutes. Alternative communication channels become more than just a contingency when M365 core services are down. Imagine having a mass SMS system ready to shoot out updates to every staff cell phone. Yes, it feels old school, but when nothing else goes through, it's a lifeline. Mobile device management, MDM tools, which can push critical notifications directly to work phones regardless of M365 status, have saved the day for more than a few organizations. Even WhatsApp or Slack, where allowed, can fill in as shadow comms when the main systems fail, but you need these tools registered and vetted in advance. You can't improvise in the middle of an incident. It helps to keep a printed or locally stored copy of key contacts and escalation steps, not buried in OneNote or SharePoint, since those might be inaccessible when you need them most. Cloud status dashboards will give you a fighting chance at piecing together what's actually broken instead of waiting for the official word from Microsoft. Low-tech options, plain old phone calls, or even a group message board in a break room sound quaint, but every admin has a story about when tech failed and only a sticky note or a call tree kept people in the loop. Now add to this the need for real-time dependency maps. If you haven't diagrammed which business processes lean on what connectors or services, you'll waste precious time guessing. There's something to be said for listing out payroll can't run if SharePoint is down, or our legal team loses access to their DLP scans if Exchange drops. Keep this list updated as workflows adapt because priorities change fast in a crisis and you need to know what to fix first, not just what's loudest. Integrated dynamic playbooks that evolve as you revise your dependency map are your only shot at cutting through confusion and clawing back precious minutes of uptime when disaster strikes. The first time you run a tabletop drill with a decision tree playbook and see folks solving new problems in real time, it's obvious why static documents belong in the past. This isn't about looking clever in a retrospective, it's about lowering panic, shrinking downtime, and keeping the business moving when it feels like nothing's working. Of course, none of this matters if you can't keep people from users to execs to tech teams clued in when every familiar tool is offline. That's the next layer. Working out how to keep everyone informed through the outage, even when you're stuck in the dark. Communication in the dark, keeping people informed without Teams or Outlook. So picture this. You walk into the office expecting a normal day, only to find Teams stuck spinning, Outlook not even opening, and your phone already buzzing with, "Is it aware?" Before you've poured a cup of coffee, everyone from the help desk to the C-suite wants answers. But every channel you'd use to give those answers is part of the outage. This is one of those moments that splits teams into two camps, the ones who've accepted that comms failures come with the territory, and the ones caught totally flat-footed. It's easy to laugh off the idea of Teams and Outlook failing at the same time until you're staring at a room full of confused users who can't tell if it's a blip or a full-on disaster. The first calls start out simple. I can't log into Teams. But as the trickle grows into a flood, you're stuck. Leadership wants updates. Every 10 minutes, users expect clear instructions, and your own team is hunting for any app or trick to broadcast messages. Even if you have a communication plan, it probably lives in a SharePoint site you now can't reach. This is where a lot of organizations learn the hard way that they've bet everything on the tools that are now dark. Ask around. Almost every comms procedure assumes you'll send mass emails or update a team's channel. When those aren't an option, confusion spreads fast. A director assumes it has things under control, but without updates, rumors swirl. Users try to troubleshoot on their own. Some even pick up the phone and start texting colleagues just to figure out if it's a me problem. Suddenly, the missing technology isn't the outage itself. It's the missing loop that leaves everyone guessing. The reality is you can't copy Microsoft's status dashboard models and expect your business to be covered. Microsoft, for all its resources, only started rolling out granular status pages after years of community complaints. For most organizations, something as basic as an old-school SMS blast turns out to be a lifeline. Modern alerting tools can ping everyone's phones in seconds, and for all the frustration over dropped calls and outdated phone trees, those same fallback methods tend to outlive the fanciest platforms. More than one organization has ended up using a group text, Slack if you're allowed to run a side platform, or even a WhatsApp group to get essential info out during a major outage. These aren't perfect, but they get you past the dead air. But here's the thing that really trips up teams who think they're too modern for this. Backup communications need to be planned and rehearsed, not invented on the fly. Having an SMS service ready feels like overkill right up until you use it for the first time. That means documenting who owns the alerting system, verifying everyone's contact info is up to date, and actually running a drill, just like you'd test a fire alarm. Expecting anyone to remember the right phone tree sequence or the credentials for a third-party comms portal under pressure is wishful thinking. Good plans include printable and actually printed lists of escalation contacts and instructions, not just PDFs living in cloud storage. If your organization uses mobile device management, great. Push notifications through an MDM platform can bypass downed email and Teams channels, delivering emergency updates directly to lock screens. This only works if you've set it up for crisis comms beforehand, not just to enforce Wi-Fi settings and app policies. A surprising number of organizations don't realize just how easy it is to set up system-wide notifications until they're hunched over laptops trying to Google emergency push mobile while on a tethered phone. Transparency during a crisis is more than checking a compliance box. Most people don't need a blow-by-blow technical rundown. They want to know someone's aware and working on it. The difference between full chaos and controlled chaos is usually as simple as a one-sentence update. We are investigating a broad outage. More info in 30 minutes will buy goodwill that evaporates if users wait an hour with silence. In these moments, even admitting what you don't know can be the most honest and most helpful move. You restore trust by showing your hand, not pretending nothing's wrong. And let's not miss the emotional side. When users can't get updates, patience with IT hits zero fast. Transparent, timely communication keeps anxiety down and helps people focus on what's actually possible, not on phantom fixes or wild forum rumors. Your tech team also benefits. Clear escalation channels mean less inbox overload and a tighter sense of priorities, even when you're all working in different directions. So The organizations that weather big outages best are usually the ones that plan for their coolest tools to go dark and practice what actually happens when they do. Communication breakdowns don't have to mean information black holes. The groups who make it through aren't just playing defense, they're treating backup comms as part of core resilience, not an afterthought. Now, surviving the outage is one thing, but there's a deeper shift that separates reactive hope for the best teams from those that come back stronger each time. Let's look at the mindset that drives real resilience. The reality is M365 resilience isn't about patching things up once trouble hits. It's built on understanding what's connected, who relies on what, and where the weak points hide before any wires get crossed. The smartest teams are constantly mapping out dependencies, tuning their playbooks, and running drills that mimic real mayhem instead of practicing for easy days. The next M365 incident will always arrive faster than you'd like, and it won't pause for you to update your notes. When things go sideways, your preparation turns a scramble into a controlled response. The question is, which side do you want to be on?